For the past 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, Nigeria has been having challenges that are beckoning and waiting for answers and solutions. That is why we are bringing to you our program, State of the Nation. And this is going to come up on our flagship program this morning on ITV. I am hereby inviting you to join me, Bola Bakare, your host, on State of the Nation, so that we can hasten the motions that brings national development. It's going to be a regular basis on Tuesdays. Make it a date with me. I'll be there waiting for you, and then we shall discuss Nigeria on an holistic level.
Welcome back to your lofty program, State of the Nation, where we hasten the motions for national development. And when we talk about national development, it is a case for us all. And I trust Nigerians. In all cases, we usually delve into situations that are topical because Nigerians are very, very concerned people. We are very, very intellectual in our thinking. And at the same time, we ask loads and loads of questions that needs answers, which is part of what I could call a democratic setting of good thinkers. This morning, we shall be looking at something that has been in the news for some time. It has gone to the National Assembly. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about borrowing monies for national development. Is it the way to go? There are a lot of questions, loads of questions that would tail that. But what we're going to look at this morning is the essence of the money in itself. Because I believe in one thing. If you don't have the clout to borrow money, your bankers will never give you money. If your bankers don't trust you enough to pay back, don't trust you enough to believe in what you want to do, that development that you are going into, if your bankers don't see it, they won't give you the money. So I want us to have that at the back of our minds, that when we go out to borrow money, it is always with a guideline that says, okay, this is what we're going to use the money for. But let us learn some more. Let us juggle ideas. That is why I have in the studio with me Dr. Adeni. Good morning, my brother.
Good morning, my pleasure.
Thanks for honoring the invite, and I quite appreciate it when you honor the invite, because we get feedbacks. People say, hey, Mr. Bakare, why don't you bring Dr. Adeni back? And to use the language, I used the language some time ago when I said, well, you are in the academia. You can lecture students in the classroom, and now you're here in the studio, you lecture Nigerians via Twitter.
I doubt if I can lecture Nigerians.
No, we are smart people. We listen.
Yeah.
And whatever they do with what we say, that is an improvement on the insights you've been able to share with us.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Thank you for coming. Like I said earlier in my position, Nigeria is borrowing money for national development. At the same time, you find Nigerians out there, maybe for lack of knowledge or for maybe a deficit in knowledge, they are quick to say, why are we borrowing monies? Why are we doing this? Please take us through the meal, because I believe your kind of person, your vocation, your calling is people ask you questions on a regular basis and you come up with answers to them. Are we on the right path in borrowing monies?
Okay, there are different ways of financing projects of public financing. One is the one that you mentioned, loan. The other one is internal resources, you know. And there's a third one, you know, which I will remember shortly. But the first two are actually the main ones, you know, internally generated revenue, the one that you actually own, maybe the one in savings, you know, and external debts, maybe external or internal. You know, but the problem is not actually in borrowing. The problem is what you do with the money that you borrow. You know, some of the most prosperous nations on planet Earth are some of the most indebted at the same time.
The
United States is the most indebted nation in the world, you know, but one of the most prosperous, you know, until recently with the challenge of China, you know. Japan is also very prosperous. Their GDP is high, irrespective of their population, and they are still progressing, you know, and they are heavily indebted. Even countries countries in Europe are also heavily indebted.
Okay.
You know, so it's not about the loan really. Yes, we have had arguments, you know, that the loan that we are borrowing is still proportionate, you know, to our GDP, but that's understandable, that's official argument. But again, you want to think about what constitutes the GDP. Is it federal resources alone? Is it central resources? Or does it are state resources added to it? Now, if you add it, you know, how much, to what extent are they available to us at the center, as the case could be? So, you know, what I think is very important is for us to deal with, maybe to look inward some more, you know, and think less of harnessing one aspect of public financing, which is loan, because we are getting to the brim now, you know, and it's going to cause complications in the future. There may be arguments in some circles that they are concessionary, low interest loans, so it might take time, moratorium period is extensive, and all of that. But eventually, you are still going to have to pay back. Well, there's quite a number of things we can do within our system to prevent borrowing. One is, you know, effective and efficient management of resources. We are still in a very extremely corrupt country, you know, where public resources are frittered away, are wasted with impunity. The corruption is a compromised one, it's a systemic one, such that you hardly find any agency or any ministry of government that is not corrupt. All you are just waiting for is for them to be caught, you know. And they're only apprehending 5 or even less than 5% of them, you know, because it's really systemic, really endemic, and it's a problem. So it leads to a lot of waste. So most of the time, if we borrow 10 naira, for instance, you find out that about 7 naira is wasted in corruption. And that's the tragedy of our situation, really. And I'm not sure there's any difference, irrespective of the efforts of this government and some leaders in some circles, you know, to bring about accountability and transparency, you know, but because it is endemic, officials, personnel, agents, you know, and agencies have ways of circumventing this process. So the more you try to be strict, you know, with the process, the more they perfect the way to circumvent it. That's the tragedy. And maybe finally on this point, we have some anti-corruption agencies, EFCC, look at their headquarters built with more than 220-something billion. We have ICPC, well-structured organizations with good personnel, with good intention. But how much can they do in a land, you know, where corruption is rather dealt with through sanctioning, through apprehension and sanctioning after the judicial process instead of prevention? There's no human being that does not have a tendency to be corrupt. But what what systems do is to prevent it, you know, through tightening the processes and procedures of public financing. And you can do this massively in modern times in the 21st century through sophistication in communications technology.
From your opening, let me ask the question that probably at a tangent. Is our borrowing okay or not?
Okay, I can say...
You can make it in short words.
Yeah, I can answer it just like you asked it. I can say yes and no. Yes, because it's a legitimate source of public financing, of getting resources. And of course, if you don't have credibility, if you are bankrupt, nobody will give you loans. So, and the fact that we are still able to access loans means that we are not bankrupt. But we shouldn't push our luck too far. That's the point we're making. You know, so, but regrettably again, we're going to see government. This present government has really tried in terms of infrastructure and utilities because the evidence are there. You know, but whether or not they could have done more if we were not a corrupt nation, it's a different ballgame. But that's at the level of hypothesis, at the level of speculation, and we may not necessarily go into that. But the point is this: is that you still have reasons to suspect that, you know, those resources could still have been sourced internally. The resources that would depend so much upon to finance some of these projects could have been sourced internally, you know, if waste is curtailed over the years. Do not forget that we've been making attempts over the years through reform agencies like the BPSR, the BPP, etc., you know, to strengthen the institutional mechanism that will prevent, you know, the frittering away of public resources. Look at the Bureau of Public Procurement, for instance. You know, it's an organization that came on the back of a World Bank study, that discovered that out of every 10 naira, 6 naira is wasted in public expenditure process. And this was in the late in the early 2000s, from early 2000 up to 2007, when the Public Procurement Act was passed at the end of the day. And what is the reform was saying that, before you spend money, let's have a needs assessment. Let's be sure the money is there. Do public open competition. Let's ensure quality, competition, and transparency.
That's right.
But again, questions can still be asked over the effectivity of this organization. And it's not just a loan. It's not BPP is not alone. Trials they are doing, no doubt. But it's not alone. There are so many other reform agencies. I just mentioned the reform and agency and correction agencies. I just mentioned the EFCC. ICP is also there. We have all these things. The question we should be asking ourselves is, why are people still not afraid to steal? Why are people still plundering?
Thank you very much.
With all those resources, all those sanctioning agencies, so why are people still stealing? And we see, of course, salacious, sensational stories about arrest, detention, EFCC stories here and there, but it's not stopping people. So it just means that something is fundamentally wrong with the system. Why not deal with those things that is wrong? Maybe at the level of institution, because the institutions are probably weak. They are permissive of embezzlement and frittering away of resources, just like that.
Okay, thank you very much. You see, based on your sentences prior, I would like to bring in another institution of government that has our funds, AMCON. When AMCON was set up, the money that was used to set up AMCON was at par with budget of that year, if you remember. Until date, as we speak, less than 100 Nigerians are owing 5 trillion. What do you think we should do? Basically, you've said it that, okay, we have institutions of government that are weak in the performances. But at the same time, we can't just sit back and look at the funds that we have. The people that borrowed them. Remember, there was a case they said pretty soon we're going to do name and shame. And that was the last we heard of it. So I am looking at the situation, like you said, that, okay, we can source the funds locally. What do you think will happen if after the 5 trillion that AMCON is being owed, like 3 trillion comes into the picture? Think along these lines and then enlighten us some more, please.
Yeah, it comes back to what I was saying about us having institutions, having agencies that are reformist, that are corrective. But no sooner are they set up, then you see high level of inefficiency, or you're not likely to see compliance or success at the level of their mandates. And I'm not judging AMCON, but it's just regrettable to see that corruption is not also peculiar to the public sector alone, even the private sector. Because it's actually private sector corruption, partly, that led to the establishment of AMCON.
Yes.
Individuals
banking industries.
Individuals take loans, run into billions, they fail to pay, and the loans these are people's resources, and government is now forced to pay, to intervene on behalf of the people, because that's the role of government, and of course these same people, we still see them every day occupying political positions. Look at the contradictions, occupying political positions and moving about with convoy of cars, with escorts and all of that. Contradiction again. So there's no deterrence, which is a main problem.
You just said earlier.
Taking us to the question of the law. How effective are the laws? Are the laws being activated? Do we have the courage, the political will to activate, implement, and execute them so that there can be deterrence, there can be sanctions, and probably there can be recoveries?
That's right.
At some point in the life of EFCC, we're seeing recoveries. How much recoveries have we made? And I dare say that it is possible for us to make recoveries if we're serious.
If the will is there.
If the political will is there. So it's just unthinkable when you see a situation where we're in a country where maybe 60% of the nation's wealth, rightly or wrongly, is in the hands of less than 10 people. And of course, maybe another 40% of the nation's wealth is illegally in the hands of a few people as well. Profound, deep-seated contradictions, that shouldn't be acceptable in an ideal nation, not even a developing country, with challenges of welfare, challenges of security, and challenges of growth and development.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Because you see, looking at all these parameters you've been able to put across to us, we're still in the same quagmire. And being a positive thinker that I am, all we've done for the past few minutes is we've been able to put together all the problems. It's all problem. Can you please prefer solutions? You've talked in terms of institutions, really, but prefer solutions that Nigerians can listen to. Like I told you earlier, I will always hold it to you that you're in the academia, you owe it to teach us some more. let's share those insights, and then we'll be able to go ahead from that.
You see, there's also another maybe ethical or moral contradiction within the Nigerian system. The average Nigerian understands the problem of this country. You know, for instance, maybe 95% of people who are involved in corruption know that it is bad, you know, but they can't also help it because the system is very overwhelming, you know, such that if you do not participate in it, you're either shoved aside, you're either injured, you know, you're either prevented from achieving your aim. So one way or the other, you find yourself welcoming corruption, unfortunately. So it is in our sociology, consciously or unconsciously. And having said that, there are solutions, no doubt, but solution starts essentially and ends with leadership.
That's true.
We have seen samples in the history of this country, even in contemporary times, of how leaders have been dynamic and how they've been able to bring about change.
Like I said, that it's in your purview to educate us, if not on a daily basis, on a regular basis. And then you've been able to say, okay, the situation we have on hand is totally endemic, is inherent, but I still believe in one thing: for every problem there should be a solution. You were saying it earlier, you are trying to provide some solutions for us. Can we continue along that trajectory?
Yeah, so I was saying that there's no Nigerian that does not know the problem of this country. Okay. For instance, we know that corruption is upon us. Everywhere you see there's corruption, you know, and 95% of those who participate in it also know that it is bad. But at the same time, you know, they find it difficult to resist it.
What is wrong with us?
Good. You know, because the system is overwhelming, and you're rather the abnormal person if you do not participate in the abnormality. And sometimes it can even mean that you're endangering your life, because you'll be seen as trying to be righteous, you know, or to be righteous, or to fight the system, like you said, in a situation where everybody is doing it, you know. So, but who will bail the cat? And that's where the leadership question comes in. And I was going to say that there are different instances where we have seen our leadership, you know, leading by precept, showing example, not just through what they say, but through their actions.
Walking the talk.
But we are in a system where you see leaders luxuriate openly. You see people in public service owning estates. You see somebody who was probably nowhere the day before, the day after he gets into government. He's an owner of estates, an owner of luxury cars, begins to go back and forth abroad, you know, living an expensive life, living large, so to say. So we are all witnesses to these things, and those behind are also, those outside who have not opportune are witnesses to these things. So it has become a situation where those outside are only just waiting for their own opportunity
to get there and
go and
do
plunder. You know, so there's no moral beacon anymore. There's no determination on the part of anyone to go and right the wrong. So it's just a pitiable, pathetic situation. And that's why ahead of President Buhari's ascension, we all celebrated that he was a man of integrity, because likely you wouldn't have seen him. We didn't know him for owning a mansion in Daura or a castle like some of his peers. You know, we saw this austere pattern, disposition. Yes. So we were very hopeful. And 6 years down the line, I wouldn't say that he has deviated. Because I'm not, the last time I checked, I didn't see a castle in Daura. Neither did I see him with a penchant for luxury, you know. So at the level of example here, it's not a personal example. It's not really bad, but it should go beyond him. It should permeate the dimensions of his inner and outer circle, you know, so that that culture, that virtue, you know, that value can spread, you know. And if it's spread, of course, you can begin to see changes. You know, nations have passed through what we're passing through now.
That's what I just wanted to ask you. Is this not a passing phase for us that we are going to get out of?
But the passing phase is is coming to, is the delay is too much. The passing phase is long lasting because we have examples to learn from. For instance, you can't say that we are, in terms of development, we were like Europe before the Industrial Revolution. So we can't be saying that because 30, 35 years ago, we were also like China, we're like Singapore and Malaysia, the level of development. So, but we have nations, we have these developed nations to learn from because they have exemplified progress and they have proved that these things can be done, you know. That's so if they have showed it, I will have them to learn from. We can harness, we're in a global decentered world where you can, you know, borrow personnel, learn examples. You know, if we are very serious and conscientious about these things, through the determination of a leader that will galvanize us, I think we can prepare ourselves to the real next level, really.
Thank you very, very much. And then to you, our viewers out there, like I promised you earlier, that listening to Dr. Adeni is going to be a fine tutorial class for us. And we've enjoyed it. We've enjoyed his insights. All it takes, I repeat, all it takes is for us to assimilate it. Because like he said, it's common knowledge. The problem we have is us. And the inherent anomaly that is our behavior is us. If we're going to effect a change, it's going to be us. Because like my people say, if the heavens is going to fall, it's not the business of one person. It's a collective business. It's going to crash on us all. Do we have to wait until things crash? The answer is one big no. But the funny thing is, like he proceeded, he said, institutions are what will make things work. The bigger countries will look up to have strong institutions. He made an inference which I like about Mr. President. He said from his own perspective, from then till now, the man is still his Spartan self. Why can't the factor of the man, why can't it permeate to all those that work around him? It boils down to what? Us. It boils down to you and I. The Nigerian that is you and I. And that is why we need a change. We need to effect a change. And on this juncture, I would like to say one very big thank you to Dr. Adeni. Thank you for coming around and then sharing your insights.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And you better be rest assured I'll call you some other time because Nigerians are good listeners. They are good listeners and they like concise insights, which you share with us on a regular basis.
Thank you.
And to you, my viewers, that has been Dr. Adeni, who has been able to give us fantastic insights into what we should be and what we are not, and who we should copy